consensus terms, we may begin by agreeing that we are in fact here present, that we are present here as actual, rational, or at any rate partially rational primates, that we are on a real planet and we are in a verifiable solar system. Let's not congratulate ourselves too much on this, but it is an achievement of a kind, and it is something we have in common. We can also agree, I think, the chances of this coincidence, or I'd better say really contingency, are fairly remote. They have this, of course, in common with other much less rare contingencies. Any of us here today are much luckier in the aggregate than would have been any comparably randomly selected group of people born 500 years ago, whose life expectancy would have been perhaps 30, and whose infant mortality rate would have been something ghastly to behold. Or if we were born in today's Congo or Darfur. However, from the observation of exactly precisely the same facts, and the same phenomena, and the same processes, it's always been possible to draw two kinds of conclusion, and it always will be possible to draw two kinds of conclusion. The first is to say that no great decider exists. There isn't a decider who awarded me the right to live, while another baby 2 miles or 2,000 miles away barely lived long enough to cry before dying of diarrhea. I don't credit or blame God for these things occurring. So forth occur not because of the will of divine punishment or divine judgment or divine verdict, but because we live on a climatically volatile planet with a cooling crust which has quite deep faults in some parts of it, including locally. That would be a better explanation, but it doesn't convince everybody. The laws of nature are never suspended. Albert Einstein said that's the miraculous, the only miraculous thing about them, that they never change, that they're completely regular. And they certainly are not suspended in response to prayer or in response to ritual sacrifices, and so forth. The positions I've just given you are my own positions, my own views. I didn't think them up all by myself, but I agree with them. Against it, you can always take the view that we are here as the result of a plan. That we are the object of a divine design, that somebody cares about us, and that this plan seems to imply an author or a designer. These same differences in approach have more recently begun to reflect themselves in the fields of biology and physics, but they are the same as they always were. Now, the supporters of creationism, and I recommend the reading of Judge John Jones's verdict. Google Judge John Jones and Dover, Pennsylvania, if you want to understand why I say creationism, not intelligent design, his ruling in the Pennsylvania court case on this. The supporters of this creationist movement have to be able to do four things to you tonight. Watch and see if they can. They must show first that the cosmos itself can be interpreted in the light of a design, or fine-tuning, as it's sometimes called. They must show second that our own planet's hospitality to life is not an accident, not a contingency, and thus might be serving a purpose larger than itself. These two gigantic attainments, if available to them, would only get them as far as the implication of an author or a designer. That's what used to be called the deistic position. To get to the position that they really want to occupy, that is their concealed agenda, if you will, their surreptitious wish, the theistic wish, they'd have to be able to show that this deity was not just a creator or designer, but took an interest in human affairs, wanted to regulate the morality of his creatures, would be responsive to appeals from them, deciding on the matter of rewards and punishments, would care whether you ate pork, would care whether you snipped the end of your dick or your daughter's clitoris, would care what day you took as holy, would care what propitiations you made to him or her. Now that is the end result, and don't lose sight of it. And the stages of initial proof, hard as they are the ones you have to watch out for in the meantime. Now, our vast new knowledge isn't all that decisive in resolving this ancient dispute, but it can be of help. I asked Francis Collins, the leading Christian who did the Genome Project, as you probably know, how long he thought humanity had been on the Earth, and I asked Professor Richard Dawkins how long he thought fully evolved humans had been present. Dawkins thinks it could have been as many as 250,000 years. Collins thinks certainly not less than 100,000. 100,000 is all I need. 100,000 years since we definitely separated ourselves from the Cro-Magnons and the Neanderthals. I'm exempting from this those of you who may have been to the new Creation Science Museum in Ohio, where you can see animatronic children playing with animatronic dinosaurs in the same park at the same time. And I'm assuming that I can exempt you from that too, sir. But be aware of what some of the implications of this are. Now, that's to say, if you believe in a divine intervention in our lives, that give it just 100,000 years, for the first 94, 95,000, people are born, they die mainly of their teeth or in childbirth or of microorganisms they don't know exist. Their life expectancy is for the first 50 or 60,000 years, perhaps 25 years. They're killed by animals, they're killed by each other in pointless turf wars, they're killed in typhoons, floods, mudslides and so forth. But gradually they make slow exponential progress. They get to the point of suffering all the time, and heaven watches it with folded arms like this. And then 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, heaven decides we can't let them go on like this. We need an intervention. Probably the best place for it would be in Bronze Age Palestine or Egypt. Probably the best form it could take would be a human sacrifice. That might cheer them up a bit. Now, if you don't believe this, you do not believe in any of the three monotheistic revelations. That's what you have to believe. That's the minimum you must believe in order to believe in any of those aforesaid. And of course, it's not believable, or, shall I put it like this, it only replaces the argument as before. It replaces the argument as it was before we knew about Cro-Magnons, or dinosaurs, or Neanderthals. It argues from design. And if everything was designed, what are we to make of the designer, who sentenced so many generations to barbarism, misery, ignorance, slavery, and early death? In the first place, isn't that rather an incompetent, rather tinkering designer, to say the very least of it? In the second place, isn't it a rather cruel, or at the very best, a highly indifferent one? And we still can't be sure whether this same incompetent and indifferent and cruel person cares whether we go to bed with members of our own gender or not, because there's no way to derive verdicts like this from evidence like that. So the religious still haven't scored the ghost of a point. And that's only to comment on what we know about the last 100,000 or 250,000 years of our own lives. Less than a millisecond of evolutionary or cosmic time. Any study of the process by which it occurred, and we're not, I hope, going to hear that it did not, has to impress us with two further facts that are facts, verifiable, findings, verifiable. The first, 98% of every species that ever appeared on this earth has by now also disappeared from it, become extinct. The second is how very nearly we, as a species, joined that list. Look up, if you will, the scientist at the National Geographic who now makes it possible for you to look up your own genome, sequence it all the way back to Africa, find out what your ancestry and ethnic parentage is, avoiding the stupid concepts of race that have oppressed us for so long. According to him, by the time we decided to abandon the environment for which our bodies are still adapted, the African savanna, it's very probable, due to volcanic eruptions blotting out of the sunshine by particulate matter, and other terrible occurrences, that we were as a tribe down to less than a few thousand individuals before deciding we better get out of this place. We better move on up and out where it's cooler. It's only a very, very contingent matter that we made it this far. And we did not make it because we were helped. We did it by our own unaided effort, if I can put it like that. And our organs, as you can see, when you examine the appendix, the jawline, the coat of fur that you grow and shed in the womb when you're 3 months old, still adapted, annoyingly for us, as are your knee joints and many other things, to the African savanna that we had the good sense in time to abandon. Now, that's not the worst of it. You've got to now think what's going to happen to the cosmos and our place in it.